The Israelite soldiers facing Goliath said, "He's gigantic. There's no way we can defeat him." David, future king of Israel, facing Goliath, said, "He's gigantic. There's no way I can miss him." Attitude is everything. There's no way I can miss him. When I was 5 years old, I made a handprint in kindergarten as a Mother's Day gift for my mom. My mother kept it and schlepped it to the 6 different houses she lived in for the next 70 years. When she died 2 years ago, I brought it home with me. And then the fire took it. When Gable was 5 years old, she made me my first Abba's Day gift, when she was in kindergarten, of a little wooden boat. It sat proudly on my desk at home for the past 40 years. And then the fire took it. And there are 1,000 stories just like that in this sanctuary tonight. For the past 9 months, 2 quotes have been constantly churning in my mind. The first from 6th century Chinese sage Lao Tzu, who famously said, "New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings." And the second was a somewhat surprising challenge, I suppose, of Rabbi Akiba in the tractate Brachot in the Talmud. What else would a rabbi be thinking about for the last 9 months but the Talmud? But Rabbi Akiba in the Talmud, who taught, one must bless God for the bad, even as we bless God for the good. Let me tell you that I really tried not to talk about this at all tonight. So I apologize, because I just couldn't help it. Even though I know that most of you here in the sanctuary have been through the same fire, the same traumas, the same reaching virtually every day for something only to realize, oh, I don't have that anymore. So what can I possibly say that almost every one of you hasn't thought yourselves during this long expulsion into the KI diaspora? And then I realized, it's maybe not about saying something new at all. Maybe it's simply saying something shared so powerfully it has changed all of our lives. Actually, I have kept picturing Fiddler on the Roof for the last 9 months. That scene where they're all forced to leave Anatevka. And what are they singing? They sing a pot, a pan, a broom, a hat. What's a house, or a stove, or a stick of wood, a piece of cloth? Soon I'll be a stranger in a strange new place, searching for an old familiar face. And here we are, searching for an old familiar face. One must bless God for the bad, even as we bless God for the good. How is that really even possible? Actually, I've always been fascinated by the word impossible, because the word itself also contains the words, I'm possible. And that's a fundamental truth of life that I think is worth remembering tonight. Your very existence means you won the ultimate lottery in life. You know that. Your very existence, being born, being possible. So just for a moment, here tonight, on this new year, revel in the wonder of it all, the utter magic of it all, the amazement of your own existence. Fire, flood, earthquake, come what may, your very life is still and will always be literally a miracle. And ever since your miraculous birth, anything is possible. I was leading services this summer, and I asked people to share a blessing for Shabbat. And this little boy stood up, raised his hand, so I said, "What's your blessing for Shabbat?" And he said, "Amazing." So I asked, "What's amazing?" And he said, "How fast time goes by. I was just 6, and now I'm 7. Amazing indeed." Bless God for the bad. So where is the blessing? Well, I have to say that the greatest surprise of all to me in the days following the fire was the simple, spontaneous outpouring of kindness, of compassion, of grace by so many strangers in so many settings. So often it was constantly bringing tears into my eyes. And I know you felt it too. This remarkable anonymous gestures of giving. Not once, but twice. We'd walk into a store, Dee Dee and I, to buy something to replace something that we'd lost, and literally the salespeople would hug us when they heard that we were victims of the fire, or immediately say, "Oh, well, we give a 30% discount to anyone who's a victim of the fire," and my eyes would fill up with tears. Over and over and over and over again for many months. The simple opening of the human heart was my greatest takeaway. And in the midst of this moment of time, especially with such extreme divisiveness and anger and hostility and the us versus them and all that you all know, here was the triumph of humanity reasserting itself as a collective community consciousness. A simple, tender reminder of what matters most. And as I've always said, the most important things in life are never things at all. They're always people. The people we love, the people with whom we share this planet. And our wildfire was news literally all over the world. Dee Dee and I were in Sydney, Australia in May, and everyone there was talking about, when they heard we were from Los Angeles, our fire, our trauma, our losses in Australia. Japanese Zen philosophy has a form of art known as kintsugi. It's inspired by a culture that strives to find beauty in imperfection. The idea actually begins with the crack of a teacup, where we Westerners might just consider it simply broken and useless and maybe throw it away. The Japanese would piece together such broken ceramics using lacquer and then sprinkle the joints with powdered gold to decorate and indeed to celebrate its flaws. It's as if the emphasis on the broken part enhances and beautifies the richness of its history, allowing a broken object to be reborn. Perhaps that's why in our tradition, the broken tablets of the 10 Commandments that Moses shattered were carried lovingly, sacredly, throughout the whole 40 days of wandering in the Ark of the Covenant with the whole tablets and brought into the Holy of Holies in the Promised Land. Bless God for the bad. We are taught that even our own brokenness is holy. By the way, Dee Dee and I were very diligent about disaster preparation. We had literally boxes and boxes of disaster preparedness food put aside, all of which, of course, burned up in the disaster itself. You gotta laugh. Bless God for the bad, because it melts the heart and opens the soul to the common suffering of all humanity. Someone once said, "You will be known forever by the tracks you leave in other people's lives." That has always been and will always be one of the ultimate realities of our lives. What we say and what we do and who we are matters, yes, because of the impact we have on the lives of others, from loved ones to strangers. Best-selling novelist Jodi Picoult, in her book Wish You Were Here, tells another story also about Japan. Evidently, there are monuments there called tsunami stones, giant tablets on the coastline that warn descendants of earlier settlers not to build their homes past a certain point. They date back to 1896, when 2 tsunamis killed 22,000 people along the coast of Japan. The Japanese evidently believe that it takes 3 generations to forget traumas. Those who experience the trauma pass it to their children and their grandchildren, and then the memory can fade. Of course, to the survivors of a tragedy, that's almost unthinkable. What's the point of living through something terrible if you can't convey the lessons that you've learned? Since nothing will truly replace all that you've lost, they believe the only way to make meaning is to make sure no one else goes through what they did. In their world, memories are the safeguards they use to keep from making the same mistakes. All well and good, but what if you didn't make the mistake in the first place? If you did nothing wrong? That fire, not my fault. That fire, not your fault. But how many times have I, and maybe some of you, had the thought, damn, I should have taken fill in the blank. Those niggling regrets that we actually know are totally, rationally unreasonable to feel, and yet we do. Of course, I evacuated thinking I'd only be gone for a few days. I checked into the Marriott for 4 days and checked out 6 weeks later. If I'd thought forever, I would have taken other things, of course. But how would I know it was forever? How would any of us? And then again, our culture is not the same as the Japanese anyway. In our world, the Jewish world, memories are practically where we live forever. We read in the Haggadah every year at Passover. In every generation they rise up against us to destroy us. For sadly, that has been the Jewish experience for the last 3,000 years or so as well. Trauma and tragedy in one generation, followed by trauma and tragedy in the next generation. But the Haggadah prayer ends, and the Holy One rescues us from their hands. It's not just trauma and tragedy. It's trauma and redemption. It's tragedy and redemption. That's the Jewish experience as well. For along the way, we have all those Nobel Prizes that we earned, and the songs that we wrote, and the movies that we made, and the social justice that we pursued, and the Freuds and the Einsteins, and so many comedians. That too is the Jewish experience in a nutshell. Trauma and redemption. One of my favorite singers, Jelly Roll, beautifully said at last year's CMA Awards, the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason, because what's in front of you is so much more important than what's behind. In spite of the trauma, in spite of the tragedy, in spite of the losses so devastating to so many of us, here we are. Here we are. Trauma and redemption. Bless God for the bad, as we bless God for the good. Dee Dee and I religiously watch one program on TV every day. It's called General Hospital. In one episode, one of the characters remarked, "I don't think miracles have an expiration date." And I've carried that quote in my mind ever since. I don't think miracles have an expiration date. I think I mentioned once that in Sao Paulo, Brazil, there is a park called Ibirapuera. And in that park is an exhibit entitled A Mile in My Shoes. It's this giant shoebox. No paintings, no works of art, just well-worn shoes. And each comes with a recording of the personal stories of the person who wore them. So every visitor gets to experience walking a mile in the life of another. They call this their empathy museum. Judgments close down the mind. Empathy. opens the heart. This year more than ever, may we open our hearts to each other with compassion and with tenderness and with love. So I'm going to leave you just with the beautiful and famous words of Leonard Cohen that I know you all heard. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Shana Tova. May it be a sweet year for us all.